So now we're going to look at putting a job order on in Workdesk. A job order basically matches up a candidate with a client. So in this case, the client we've got is Green Life Group in Queensland. And just as an example, we're going to put Aaron Smith to work there. As an example, he wouldn't work from Hilton to Queensland. He's also gone, but it's just an example. So what we want to do is to create a new job order which links the two of them. The job order will contain details like work location, start and finish time, and pay and charge, as well as revenue codes. So it is important that we stick to the correct format here. So in order to create a new job order to link the two of them up, one of the ways that we can do that is to click on Job Order here. And by default, it brings up the last job order that we were looking at. So with our job orders, we want to come in up here and add. And then we want to give the job order a number here. Now we don't have to be too fussy here. Normally what we do is we have 4 letters that give us roughly some sort of description, and then it auto numbers it. So for example, if it was Green Life Group Queensland, I might type GL Queensland and then just press tab, and it will auto number it, which means it will put on 3 digits after that. We don't have to worry about what that is, but just as long as the first 4 letters here give some sort of indication of the company and the role, as far as possible with 4 letters. Now, if we already had a job with Green Life Group Queensland and we were really replicating that job, we could base this job on that job. So what we would do there is enter in the job order number that we wanted to duplicate. But in this case, we're going to do it from scratch. So we'll leave base job empty. Confirmed, we basically say yes. We leave the temporary little radio box here ticked. And then we give the job order a title. Now, just one of the many faults with Workdesk, we only have so many characters. It's about 20 odd or something that will actually show up on the invoice. So we need to be really brief here. And ideally, we should be listing the name of the award and the level. So for GLG, it's probably gardening and landscaping services, level 2, for example. That would be sufficient. And then when it prints on the invoice or on the pay slip, it would appear there. The client code is this one here, the code of the client. So we would type GLGQLAC, and then by default it brings up the main client contact. So if it was Adam that phoned it in, we'd just type Adam, might be somebody else. Doesn't really matter what we put in that field there, that's just for us. And again, the details are only for us, but I do like to have a brief summary of the location and the duties. So you might say, this is hard with one hand, Coomera Depot, brush cutting, oops. And then you might give the name of the person as an example, Aaron Smith. Really have to get a headset. Commencement date is whatever day they want to commence, so it's tomorrow, 1/7, and finishes, let's say it's only one day, 08/02/17. Now the shifts here, we have 3 options. The default one, if they're just working day shift, is the first one there. But if they were working afternoon shift or night shift, you click that one. So we'll have just day shift. Now the days that they work in GLG, they only work Monday to Friday, so that's why we've got that ticked. But you might have a client that does weekend work, in which case you want to tick all of them, because if you don't have the weekends ticked and they work a weekend, payroll won't be able to pay them on the weekend. So just make sure that if they are going to work on weekends, you've got those boxes ticked. Now, the consultant is your consultant code that goes there. The revenue code is by state, and this is really important. So if you're working in Queensland, that revenue code is QL1410. Tab through. If you're working in South Australia, you'd use the South Australian revenue code, which I think is SA1410. Yep. And then if you were working in another state, you would have to have a revenue code and a cost category that is particular to that state. So at the moment we've got Queensland and South Australia. We will be adding the other states. If you're not sure, you could ring either Francie or Julie from payroll, or ring myself, 1410. So back to Queensland. Now the cost category for Queensland is Q. Invoice 2 we leave blank, and the GST rate we leave as standard rate. Now all we need to do is put in the pay and charge. Now this is important. There are two options here. If we know that the job is only going to be normal time according to the award, so they're not going to do any overtime at all, or they're not going to be doing any shift work or penalties, we can put the pay and charge in here. So $25 an hour, $38 an hour, whatever it's going to be. And then we can, under the commit person, put the payroll code of the worker, in this case Aaron Smith, TSMIAA. But just coming back to this pay and charge here, if there's any possibility of doing overtime or penalties or shift work, you need to do what's called a rate book. And a rate book will give you far more options than just the standard pay and charge. Payroll strongly prefer you to do a rate book, and that's the way we're going. So I would say, as a default, we should really be going to rate books. There is a separate procedure in Suite Process on how to create a rate book, and what you would need to do is create that rate book, then come back in here and have 0 and 0 as a pay and charge. It'll then prompt you to put in the rate book. But for now, let's just assume it's a simple job. They're only going to be working day shift and no overtime. So now that we've got our pay and our charge, we leave required at 1 and award at 1. Just on required, if the client wants 2 or 3 or 5 temps, the way we do it is we always do a separate job order per temp. So we don't put 5 in here, we would actually create 5 separate job orders. Now commit, we're going to put in TSMIAA and hit save. Now it brings up what's called a work roster screen, and you can tell it's summarised everything here. It's got the candidate here, it's got the roster here that they're going to be rostered on that date, which is Wednesday, onto that job order for that client. Everything looks good. So the way we do this is you use your tab key until the save button becomes available. So hit it, and there it is, save. We can now say save, and it takes us back to that job order. We're still in the maintain mode, which means we can still edit it. The last thing we do is we come along to these tabs here and go to additional. And the reports to would be the name of the day-to-day team leader. So let's just say that's Jason. And we might even have the mobile number. That's useful for our monitoring person. When the work desk report is printed, we can then have the name of the person they report to and their mobile number. Hit save, hit exit, and that's it. We've now created a job order to match Aaron to GLG Queensland, and we've rostered him onto that job order. If we wanted to check to make sure, we would go back to Aaron's candidate file, and you could look on his work roster. And there it is, from the 8th to the 8th, a single day, GLG roster is up and job order is done. That will mean now that payroll, when they receive his timesheet, they're able